be today's presenter.
Thank you, Rachel. We know you may have many questions on the American Housing Survey, and we encourage you to ask as many as come to mind. As we go through the presentation, please enter your questions in the question box and click Submit. Please do this for each question you have. We will respond to as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. If we do not get to your question during the webinar, Mr. Buchholz or a member of his team will follow up with you directly. Now it seems appropriate, with the National Homeownership Month coming in June, that we begin our discussion about the American Housing Survey. We'd like to start with the presentation by giving you a little history and background. The American Housing Survey is the nation's most comprehensive housing survey. It is funded and overseen by the Department of Housing and Urban Development and administered by the U.S. Census Bureau. The survey was launched in 1973 as the annual housing survey, and it has been conducted biennially since 1981. The current name of American Housing Survey was adopted in 1984. The most recent survey was conducted in 2015, with data releases beginning in late 2016. HUD and Census will begin the next survey in June of this year, with survey activities running through September 2017. Data from the 2017 survey will be released in 2018 and 2019. The American Housing Survey is authorized by an act of Congress, with funding and oversight provided by HUD and data collection conducted by Census. The mission of the American Housing Survey is to supply the public with detailed and timely information about housing quality, housing costs, and neighborhood assets, in addition to supporting effective housing policy programs and markets. Professionals in many fields find this useful for planning, decision-making, market research, or various kinds of program development. We will discuss uses for the AHS in more detail shortly. The strategic goals align directly to the survey mission. For example, in providing data to measure the quality, accessibility, and resiliency of housing, HUD and Census ensure that they monitor key factors such as the adequacy, health, and safety of U.S. housing stock, the accessibility of housing for the disabled and elderly, and the susceptibility of the housing stock as well as its occupants to disasters. With Strategic Goal 2, in measuring housing costs, affordability, and the housing finance system, HUD and Census explored data on income and housing costs for renters, the financial stability of homeowners and their use of equity to maintain their home through remodeling efforts, and the household dynamic of recent movers. In Strategic Goal number 3, HUD and Census capture information on neighborhood assets and interaction between housing and neighborhoods, such as monitoring a resident's perception of neighborhood safety and social capital, walkability, and access to public transportation, as well as neighborhood amenities. And finally, in Strategic Goal number 4, HUD and Census focus on creating a housing survey system that can adapt to changing needs and the evolving survey environment. To achieve this, the AHS team develops an effective communication plan to ensure policymakers and public and private sector constituents glean useful information from the survey results. HUD and Census also seek to expand access to the survey data and meet the needs of the research community, to explore and use alternative data sources, to reduce respondent burden, and to offer opportunities for respondents to take advantage of 21st century internet technology through online survey questions. The American Housing Survey is a data source that a wide range of Americans use in their daily work. The survey is available to all members of the public and accessible to anyone. While the general public, including even youth and young adults, will find the information contained in the survey very interesting, we find the most common users are housing and urban planning professionals, academics, trade associations, real estate, mortgage, and finance professionals, and government policymakers and analysts. HUD and Census redesigned the American Housing Survey for 2015. They did this for several reasons. Between 1985 and 2013, the survey maintained the same longitudinal sample. This meant that every 2 years, HUD and Census went back to the same housing units and asked the same questions. This provided researchers with a long-term glimpse at the various housing characteristics as they changed over time for a single housing unit. However, after 30 years, researchers at HUD and Census decided to initiate a major redesign to help reduce respondent burden, implement more stringent disclosure avoidance procedures, and update geographic definitions, as well as to address issues such as housing unit attrition. The new sample design is comprised of the integrated national sample and 10 independent metropolitan area samples. The integrated national sample is made up of 3 parts. It includes representative samples from the nation and each of the 15 largest metropolitan areas. It also includes a representative sample of housing units receiving HUD rental assistance. The 10 independent metropolitan area samples are collected from households in 10 different U.S. metro areas as selected from among America's top 51 largest. These are the 15 largest U.S. metropolitan areas and the 10 independent metropolitan areas included in the 2015 American Housing Survey. The HUD and Census Survey Management Team made every effort to ensure that the regions selected for the list of 10 independent metropolitan areas represent a geographically diverse cross-section of the country. A different set of 10 independent metropolitan areas will be included in the 2017 survey. With each survey, HUD and Census ensure that there is a broad range of basic or core housing data included to provide you with vital and useful housing-related information. There is tremendous depth to the detail contained in each of these topic areas. The survey topics related to housing costs and value include questions on purchase price and whether the respondent is a first-time homeowner. The home improvement sections include questions on whether the homeowner completed improvements on their own or hired contractors. And data on mortgage information includes questions on the type of loan used in the purchase and the loan terms. The income topics explore total household income as well as income source. The demographic questions covers such topics as race, ethnicity, education, and the age of the household members. The survey questions on disability examine the number of and types of disabilities in the household. The survey also includes questions on the housing unit itself, such as when it was built, the number of bedrooms, and whether it includes amenities like a porch or fireplace. The survey also includes questions on the quality of the housing, such as the existence of mold or pest problems and heating adequacy. It covers neighborhood characteristics, including the presence of abandoned buildings or bodies of water near the housing unit. The question also explores the migration or moving patterns of householders, such as the type of housing they may have lived in previously. Finally, the survey asks respondents where the housing unit obtains its water supply, for example, a well or municipality. Every 2 years, the American Housing Survey includes topical questions unique to that survey, which HUD and Census develop in conjunction with partner organizations. The first topic, health and safety characteristics, include a series of questions on the number of smokers in the household, whether electrical plugs were covered in the presence of young children, the existence of radon, and the source of household water. These questions were developed jointly with the HUD Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes. The second topic focuses on arts and culture, such as the presence of arts and cultural amenities in a neighborhood and how much value the householder places on them. This topic was created in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts. The third topic was developed in conjunction with the HUD Office on Housing Counseling and includes questions on whether householders receive home ownership or rental counseling and if they found the advice helpful. And finally, the fourth topic includes a series of questions related to food security, such as whether the household respondent was worried food would run out before money was available to buy more, if the household respondent could afford to eat balanced meals, or if the respondent had to cut the size of the meal or skip a meal because there wasn't enough money to purchase food. This set of questions was developed in partnership with the USDA Economic Research Service. When you visit the American Housing Survey website to download data, you'll find the survey data is provided in two different formats, the summary tables and the public use file, or PUF, microdata. The summary tables aggregate all 2015 American Housing Survey responses and are available for both the nation and the metropolitan areas. The tables can be accessed through an online census.gov tool called the AHS Table Creator. PUF microdata are files containing individual responses to survey questions. This type of data is primarily used to create custom tabulations, which enable you to delve further into the rich detail collected in the American Housing Survey. Each housing unit record shows most of the information associated with specific housing units or individuals, except for data items that could be used to personally identify that housing unit or individuals in the household. The 2015 PUF microdata is divided into two different files that can be downloaded. The 2015 Integrated National Sample PUF includes representative samples from the nation and each of the 15 largest metropolitan areas. It also includes a representative sample of housing units receiving HUD rental assistance. The 10 independent metropolitan area samples are collected from households in 10 U.S. metro areas as selected from among America's top 51 largest. To access the PUF microdata, You must first download it and then extract and analyze it using pre-installed statistical programming applications. While it is possible to use Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel, and other similar database tools, our experience suggests that statistical software is the best choice in terms of accessing, managing, presenting, and analyzing the data. Examples of statistical software include SAS, data analysis and statistical software, and free applications such as R or Python Data Analysis Library, also known as Pandas. The public use microdata contain great information to help you better understand individual respondent details on housing characteristics. Before you delve into the microdata, we recommend you check out two new tools. First, a user's guide called Getting Started with the PUF 2015 and Beyond, which can be found in the technical documentation section of the American Housing Survey website. And second, the 2015 American Housing Survey Codebook Interactive Tool. You'll find a link to the interactive tool directly on the survey website's main page. The PUF User's Guide contains information on the 2015 sample design, differences between the 2015 survey and previous surveys, details on the file structure, and tips on how to use the Codebook Interactive tool. It also includes information on the data itself, such as the core and topical modules, variables, and the types of respondents included in the 2015 American Housing Survey. The Codebook Interactive tool replaces the previous codebooks. It offers users an interactive online approach to accessing codebook-style information. The online tool includes all the material previously contained in the American Housing Survey Codebook, but with enhanced web functionality, such as search and filter options. HUD and Census have developed additional tools and documents to help introduce you to the 2015 American Housing Survey. These include one-page information sheets and links to recent news and updates. Additional information, such as downloadable infographics containing highlights on key survey findings, will also be available in the next few days. The 2017 survey is currently in the final stages of development. HUD expects the actual survey data collection to begin in June. While the survey design will still include data from the integrated national sample, the 10 metropolitan areas will be different for 2017. In terms of topics, the 2017 survey will reinstate two modules from previous studies, emergency and disaster preparedness, and delinquent payments and notices. These modules will incorporate slightly different questions from previous surveys. HUD and Census work closely with FEMA to revise the emergency preparedness questions for the 2013 survey. These questions now reflect the respondents' ability to find disaster information, whether they have flood insurance, and the availability of emergency supplies. It also includes questions to identify connections between disasters and reasons for moving. For the questions in the delinquent payments and notices topical module, respondents will be asked if they have had difficulty making rent, mortgage, or utility payments. For the evictions module, the questions will explore the causes and consequences of evictions. And the new Journey to Work and Commuting Costs module will examine how householders get to work and how much it costs. HUD offers assistance to make the AHS data easier to use. The team welcomes the opportunity to collaborate with you. HUD will work with you to create new ways to use the survey and its data, communicate about the existence and availability of the AHS. HUD can help you create new ways to use the AHS in your work. HUD can also extend and refine your current usage of the survey data. And HUD can create unique strategies to utilize the AHS for your organization, your stakeholders, and other audiences. We are happy to meet with you via telephone or in person. Please email Sean Buchholz at shawn.j.bucholtz@hud.gov to set up an initial call or meeting. On behalf of the Department of Housing and Urban Development and the U.S. Census Bureau, we would like to thank you for joining us today as we shared information on the American Housing Survey. This concludes the presentation portion of the webinar. We will now move on to the question and answers with Sean Buchholz, the Director of Housing and Demographic Analysis with the Office of Policy Development and Research at HUD. If you haven't already submitted questions during the presentation, we encourage you to do so. We will respond to as many questions as we can during the Q&A. If we do not get to your question during the webinar, Mr. Buchholz or a member of his team will follow up with you directly.
Thank you, Mary. We've gotten a lot of great questions in from webinar participants. I'd like to start off by letting everybody know that a copy of this webinar, as well as a copy of the slides, will be made available on the AHS Census website within the next day or two. You'll be able to view the webinar or download the slides at the AHS Census website. We got a couple questions regarding how HUD and Census selected cities or metropolitan areas for the survey. First, I'd like to point out that we select metropolitan areas for the survey. We have 15 largest metropolitan areas as part of the integrated national sample and 10 independent metropolitan areas for the 2015 AHS and then a different 10 for the 2017 AHS. We don't select particular cities from a jurisdictional perspective. We select metropolitan areas. To make the decision of the metropolitan areas we wanted to include in the survey, during our redesign process prior to 2015, we solicited feedback from the AHS user community and the general public. And one of the most consistent messages we received in that feedback was a request for HUD and Census to include a consistent set of metropolitan areas in the survey, meaning the AHS user community would rather we have a small number of metropolitan areas in the survey all the time versus a large number of metropolitan areas included in the survey at random times. So based on the feedback we got from the AHS user community, we decided to make the top 15 metropolitan areas a permanent part of the integrated national sample. So they will be in there in the survey every 2 years. And then we picked an additional 20 independent metropolitan areas, and our strategy was to include 10 of them in 2015, the other 10 in 2017, and then repeat that cycle for the foreseeable future. For those 20 metropolitan areas, we selected them from among the 51 largest metropolitan areas. And our goal was to pick a set of 20 metropolitan areas that had some geographic and economic diversity. I don't want to get in too far to the weeds here, but I'll tell you that we've written a paper about how we went about selecting the metropolitan areas, and you can find that paper on the Census AHS website under the, I believe, the technical documentation or the research sections. Another question we got was, are results available for the individual metropolitan areas? And the answer is yes. Both the American Housing Survey Table Creator, which presents summary data, and the American Housing Survey Public Use File, PUF, which includes microdata, will have the top 15 metropolitan areas, as well as the other 10, the 10 independent metropolitan areas we selected for the survey. Related to that, we got a question about other areas in the survey, and the question was, I did not see the Midwest included, such as Colorado, North Dakota, or South Dakota. Were they included? The answer is yes. One of the geographic indicators for which we can produce statistics with AHS data is census divisions. And there are 9 census divisions throughout the U.S. So if you're using the AHS Table Creator, you can create estimates for census division. And if you're using the public use file, you can do the same thing. You can create estimates for census divisions. We got a question about how many people participate in the survey in a given cycle. The short answer is there's approximately 115,000 households who are selected for the survey. However, as with many household surveys, there is some non-response. And so what we end up with after data collection is finished is good responses for about 95,000 households. We got another question, why is AHS data not available for all MSAs? And a related question to that, do you publish data at the census tract level? The reason we don't publish data for all MSAs is our sample size simply isn't large enough to be able to do that. For the MSAs that are, or for the metropolitan areas that are not part of our top 15 or are not part of our 10 independent metropolitan areas, we only have at most between 1 and 200 housing units surveyed within that metropolitan area. And with that small of a sample size, HUD and Census don't publish results because they don't meet our statistical reliability standards. The same thing is, and that's the same reason we do not publish data at the census tract level. Simply put, our sample size is not large enough to produce statistically reliable estimates that meet our publication standards. Another good question, does the survey address energy efficiency? Two areas in the survey in which we collect some data related to energy efficiency. First of all, we do collect information on utility costs for households and housing units. And in some cases, we estimate utility costs for the household. In another area, when we ask questions about remodeling projects, we do ask respondents if they undertook their remodeling project for energy efficiency purposes. We got a question, how do HUD and the Census Bureau select respondents to the survey, and who are the respondents? It's important to note that HUD and Census are selecting housing units, not people. Of course, housing units do not respond to a survey, people respond to it, but our unit of sample are housing units. We have virtually every type of housing unit in the U.S. in the American Housing Survey sample, except for group quarters, which means dorms, military bases, prisons, and other places where that are defined as group quarters by the Census Bureau. It's important to point out that our selection of housing units to participate in the survey is random, and that the respondents to the survey are most often an adult in the household. We got a great question. Are there survey questions related to accessible housing features? For the 2015 AHS, there are just a small number of questions related to the accessibility of the housing unit. For those of you who've worked with the AHS before, you may be aware that we had some housing accessibility questions in the survey in 2011. And we are considering reintroducing those questions into the survey for 2019. But for 2015 and 2017, there's just a small handful of questions about accessibility of the housing stock. We got a question of, will the integrated national sample be longitudinal beginning in 2015, or will different units be sampled every other year? The integrated national sample is longitudinal. We will be visiting those same housing units every 2 years for the foreseeable future. Of course, some housing units drop out of the sample because they are destroyed by natural disasters or demolished. And to keep our sample fresh, so to speak, we will be adding a couple hundred housing units every year to the integrated national sample. We got a question for respondents who are evicted or moved recently. Will there be any available information on the previous location of the respondent? In the public use microfile and in the table creator, we have an indicator related to this particular issue, which is, did the household move from a place that was more than 50 miles away? And we put that indicator in there to try to make a distinction between households that may have moved within a metropolitan area or locality versus housing units that migrated from another metropolitan area. A great question. Are there any findings from the 2015 survey that were a surprise to HUD and the census team? Yes, there's quite often a lot of results that we get from each survey that are a surprise to us. But I would like to point out one data point in particular. In past surveys, including the 2011 and 2013 American Housing Survey, we asked respondents about whether or not they paid a condo fee, and if so, how much. And our past results show that about 4.8 million households were paying a monthly or annual condo or cooperative fee. Well, one of our longtime data users, the Community Associations Institute, pointed out to us that they thought we might be missing an important group of households that pay a similar fee, and those are households whose housing unit belongs to a homeowners association. That specific phrase, homeowners association, was not part of our question text. So working hand in hand with the Community Associations Institute, we modified our question for 2015 to make sure we were asking about homeowners associations fees in addition to condominium or cooperative fees. What we found was the number of households who reported paying some type of condo or homeowners association fee more than tripled between 2013 and 2015. Number went from 4.8 million in 2013 to over 16 million in 2015. And because condo fee, or because homeowners association fees are an important part of housing costs, this really let us know that we, with the 2015 redesign, are doing an even better job than we were before at getting at all the different ways in which households experience housing costs. A question about merging with past years. Given the sample design, is it possible to merge the 2015 AHS data with AHS data from prior survey years? And if so, is there guidance on how to do the merging appropriately? So as we mentioned, the 2015 survey, we redesigned the AHS for 2015, and we selected an entirely new longitudinal sample, meaning it was not our intention for users to be able to link 2015 housing units that were in the sample with housing units that were in 2013 or prior years. However, based on past experience of both HUD and Census as well as other research about making big sample design changes, we also included what we called a bridge sample in 2015, which is a selection of about 6,000 housing units that were in the survey in 2013 and were included in the survey in 2015. And we developed that bridge sample to mostly for statistical reasons, to make sure that our sample design change wasn't causing some of our key estimates to change more than we thought they would change by normal movement in the housing market. At this time, we don't plan to make the bridge sample a public, like a public use file product. It's mostly for internal research uses for HUD and for the Census Bureau and other teams that are doing research on the AHS. However, if you are interested in using the bridge sample, please get in touch with me, with HUD, and we can talk about your particular project and what you're trying to accomplish. A question about the top 15 metropolitan areas. Will the top 15 change over time if they fall out of the top 15 ranking, or will they remain in the sample regardless of whether or not they're in the top 15? As of now, our plan is to keep those top 15 metropolitan areas the same going forward. But, you know, we cannot predict what the future is going to hold for the AHS, you know, 8-10 years down the road. Data needs may change, the survey environment may change, but our intention right now and our strategic plan, to be very specific, says that those top 15 metropolitan areas will remain the same through the duration of this longitudinal sample. A question, are there ways to compare the health and housing quality of residents in HUD-assisted housing versus those that are not in HUD-assisted housing? And the answer to that is yes, within the next couple of weeks. Within the next few weeks, HUD and the Census Bureau are going to release both updates to the AHS table creator as well as version 1.1 of the public use file. And both of these products will include the ability to distinguish which housing units are receiving HUD assistance versus the housing units that are not receiving HUD assistance. Another question, does the survey include information on the effect of foreclosed homes to neighboring homes? We do not include that in the American Housing Survey. Our sample design is such that we're revisiting a particular home over time, but we're not making an attempt to collect information about homes that neighbor the particular home in our sample. However, for folks that are interested in that line of research, you may want to consider developing a research proposal and requesting access to the AHS internal use file from HUD and the Census Bureau. The internal use file includes a lot more specific information about the location of the housing units, which permits researchers and other folks to be able to do more with the AHS data. Getting access to the internal use file requires both approval from the HUD and the Census Bureau on the project that you're interested in doing, as well as a process to obtain what is called special sworn status from the Census Bureau. And it most often includes a fee to access the data at one of the Census Bureau's research data centers. We got a question about survey language. Does HUD and the Census conduct a survey in a language other than English? The answer is yes. The Census Bureau produces both an English and Spanish version of the AHS instrument. In addition, the Census Bureau recruits field representatives who speak various languages in order to administer the survey to households who do not speak English as their primary language. I would like to point out here that the American Housing Survey is administered with a what's called a CAPI, a computer-assisted personal interview. In essence, the survey instrument is a piece of software on a computer. So we don't have an official paper questionnaire like you might see for the American Community Survey or other surveys. However, we do make a product available, which is, for lack of a better term, a printout of the computer-assisted personal interview screen. And that printout can give you a pretty good idea of the specific questions we're asking and how we go about asking the questions. A question about data that we might attach to the AHS. Does the survey identify if respondents live in low-income housing tax credit properties? For those of you who are not aware, the low-income housing tax credit is a program that provides tax credits to produce multifamily housing for low-income populations. Although we use administrative data sources to identify which AHS housing units are HUD-assisted, we don't currently do that for identifying which AHS housing units are in low-income housing tax credit properties. There's a whole host of reasons why that is a technically difficult thing to do, and I'd be happy to engage in a one-on-one conversation with anybody who would like a little bit more background as to why we can't do that right now. Another question, is there information reported at a suburban level, such as areas within a metropolitan area? For 2015, the answer is not yet, but it will be available within the next 6 months or so within the AHS table creator. If you've used the AHS table creator for either 2011 or 2013, you will have the ability to produce estimates for areas within a metropolitan area. We haven't finished up that functionality yet for the 2015 data, but we will be finishing that within the next 6 months or so. All right, final couple of questions here. I mentioned before gaining access to the internal use file. A user posed a question on gaining special internal data access. How long does that application process typically take? I would say it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 months. It does require submitting a research proposal, and so the process of getting and HUD and Census HUD will work with you on your research proposal to make sure your questions are well defined and they can be answered with AHS data. So developing a proposal usually takes at least a month, and then the Census Bureau typically requires a few months for you to obtain special sworn status and get up and running in a Census research data center. Another question, a user asks, I'm wondering about data for sparsely populated rural areas. Can you discuss reliability and recommendations for determining the number of low and moderate income people for HUD program area eligibility? So again, this question relates to an answer I gave a couple of questions ago about we will be adding some additional functionality to the American Housing Survey table creator that will allow you to produce AHS estimates for rural areas cross-tabulated by census division. So you will be able to produce some rural estimates. However, we don't currently have an indicator for the 2015 AHS that denotes sparsely populated rural areas versus not sparsely populated rural areas. One final question. Are there any questions around the homelessness experience? And the answer with the AHS is no. We do not ask questions about folks who may have been homeless before. And because we're a housing unit survey, we don't include, there's no way for us to include currently homeless people within the sample.
All right, thank you so much, Sean. This concludes our presentation about the 2015 American Housing Survey. Again, we thank Sean Buchholz for answering all of these questions for us. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact Sean by emailing him at sean.sHWN.J.Buchholz@HUD.gov. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.